In this video chapter, I will discuss the cleaning and inspection of the crankshaft after it arrives from the machine shop. Let's begin with the necessary tools for the task. We have compressed air, lint-free clean wipes, isopropyl alcohol, brake cleaner, a spray bottle, and lastly, shop paper towels. The crankshaft is one of the most complex components in the engine, second only to the engine case, and it will demand special attention during the cleaning and inspection procedure. Keep in mind the crankshaft is a heavy component designed to sustain great internal forces during normal operation. However, when outside the engine case, it is very delicate and can be easily damaged, so handle it with great care at all times. Therefore, I suggest your workbench be clear of any other items when working on the crank. Once you receive the crankshaft from the machine shop, your objective is to inspect and verify the crankshaft to be in a mechanical ready condition so that it can be installed in the engine. This can be accomplished in a 4-step process. First, perform a detailed cleaning of the crankshaft inside and out. This will remove any oil, dirt, or residue left behind during the services performed at the machine shop. In addition, a clean crankshaft is a must before your inspection process can begin. Once the crankshaft is clean, then we can continue to the next steps. Second, the visual inspection. Third, verify all critical specs and tolerances. And fourth, verify positive results on all the machine shop services performed on the crankshaft. I will go into more detail for each of the steps later in this video chapter. For now, let's begin the first step by cleaning the crankshaft. Let's begin by using the brake cleaner and compressed air to flush any internal debris. First, position the crank on the workbench and begin at the front of the crank. Notice that I will block the opposing oil orifice with my fingertip. This is so that the fluid will not immediately drain out, but rather collect in the internal cavity of the crank. Once sufficient amount of brake cleaner has been injected, then proceed to use the compressed air to flush the fluid. This process will clean and force any dirt and debris out of the crank internal cavities. Continue down the line in this manner with all the oil orifices. As you can see, the brake fluid flows from all the oil orifices when the compressed air is applied. This is because all the journals are interconnected internally to allow oil to flow throughout the entire crank. In fact, the oil pressure in the crank's main journals is measured by your instrument gauge as drug pressure. As you can see, there is a lot of dirt that accumulated inside the crank that can be attributed to any machining process done. Repeat this cleaning process as many times as necessary until there is no visible dirt coming out of the crank. Once the interior of the crank is clean, then you may proceed by cleaning the workbench surface in preparation for the next step, which is to clean the crank's exterior surfaces. Now let's clean the journals in a 2-step process. First with the shop paper towels, and then with the lint-free wipes. Notice that I'm applying some pressure on the corners in order to remove any caked on dirt or oil. Continue in this manner until all the journals are squeaky clean. One technique I found useful during this cleaning process was to fold the paper towel into the approximate width of the journal as you see here. Then wrap the paper towel around the journal and proceed to apply some brake cleaner. Then simply rotate the paper towel around the journal to clean its surface. Continue in the same meticulous manner with each one of the journals. Also, repeat this process as many times as you see necessary until the entire crankshaft is completely clean inside and out. Once you're done cleaning the tough grime with the paper towels, you may proceed by applying the same process, but now using the lint-free wipes and the spray bottle with alcohol. Once all the journals have been cleaned, then as a final step, use the compressed air to assure a perfect clean surface. make sure you use the compressed air on all the oil orifices. Here you can see the crankshaft after it has been properly cleaned. Now you may continue to the second step in the process, which is to perform a detailed visual inspection. This post-machine shop visual inspection will be the same as the one performed on the crankshaft prior to you shipping it to be serviced at the machine shop. However, there will be one main difference. This visual inspection's main purpose is to verify any deficiencies that may have been discovered or identified before have now been properly corrected by the machine shop. Therefore, you should expect to receive a crankshaft from the machine shop that is in a pristine condition. Whether your crankshaft only required basic services such as cleaning and micro polishing, or even if a complete regrind or even replacement with a used crankshaft was necessary, the objective is still the same. You must verify the crankshaft is mechanically intact with its journals in a near, if not flawless condition. This means you will have to visually scrutinize all the journals once again to verify there are no scratches or any scoring. In addition, you will want to also inspect the rest of the crankshaft components to assure they are also without any abnormalities. Remember, if you need to review the procedure to visually inspect the crankshaft, then reference the previous video chapter where I describe each of the crankshaft's individual components in detail and how to inspect all the journals for deep scratches and scoring. If your crankshaft was in pretty good condition prior to it being inspected by the machine shop, then I would expect your visual inspection now to be pretty straightforward and without any surprises. However, if you identified some minor deficiencies, such as small scratches or minor scoring on a journal, prior to your crankshaft being serviced by the machine shop, then I would focus this visual inspection to verify these small deficiencies were minimized or removed by your machine shop. If you are using a different distributor, don't forget to check the distributor worm gear to make sure it matches the direction of rotation for your new distributor. In addition, check the intermediate shaft gear and pulley bolt threads to make sure both are in good condition. Finally, if due to your particular circumstances you decided to either have your crankshaft reground or even replaced, then make sure your visual inspection is very meticulous, since in this case, for all intent and purposes, this crankshaft is a new component to the rest of your engine. Once the detailed visual inspection is complete, then we can proceed to the third step in the process. Verify all critical specs and tolerances. This means to simply measure all the journals with a micrometer to make sure they are all within acceptable tolerances after the crankshaft has been serviced. If you do not have a micrometer, then you should have previously requested that all the critical specs and tolerances be measured and written down by your machinist so that you may be able to independently review the results. If this is the case, then simply take the dimensions measured by your machine shop on all the individual journals and compare the results against the acceptable factory spec wear limits for your year and model of 911. A complete list of factory spec wear limits is on my website or mobile application. For your convenience, a printable version of this image is on my website so that you can provide a copy to your machine shop in order to document their results in this easy-to-read format. If you do have a micrometer available and can measure the journals yourself, then simply follow the procedure outlined in my video chapter titled Crankshaft Spec Measurements. Use the values you obtain from your measurements and, of course, compare them to the factory spec wear limits. Keep in mind that your crankshaft needs to be within these tight tolerances in order to maintain proper internal oil pressure during normal engine operation. Now that the journal specs have been measured and verified by you, then you can determine if the main bearings and rod bearings to be purchased will be of a standard size or if an oversized set will be needed. The machine shop should have communicated what size bearings to use well before the crankshaft was shipped back to you. Therefore, it should come as no surprise as to the size of bearings you need to order. Keep in mind that measuring or reviewing crankshaft specs at this point serves the purpose of a quality control step in your assembly process. This is an important step since you are, by default, the quality control engineer and the last person to handle all the components before they are installed in your engine. Therefore, take the appropriate time to measure or verify all the dimensions before you continue with the assembly process. Finally, we arrive to the fourth step in the inspection process. Verify positive results on all the machine shop inspections and services performed on the crankshaft. Here we have a list of typical inspections and services expected to be performed on the crankshaft while at the machine shop. Understand what each of them are and request that the results are submitted to you in writing. Typically, you will see this on a copy of the invoice. Plus, any spec measurements, I would simply expect them to be handwritten on a piece of paper or a blank copy of the crankshaft measurement sheet that I have made available on my website. The important thing is to have the results available for review when the crankshaft is returned back to you. You have now successfully completed this four-step process outlined in this video chapter to ensure your crankshaft is mechanically ready to be installed in the engine. As a final note, if you are not going to continue working on the crankshaft immediately after it has been cleaned, then I recommend you store the crankshaft inside a clean plastic bag. The purpose is to prevent any dust from collecting on top of the perfectly clean journals until you are ready to continue the assembly or inspection process. Now you are ready to continue to the next video chapter where I will cover the procedure to install the connecting rods to the crankshaft.